So yeah, I sort of welcome everybody. If you are just getting here and you're watching this later on Facebook or on YouTube, feel free to scrub either 5 minutes till we get to the lesson or 15 minutes where we will start doing storytelling games and working on stories. And welcome to everybody who is in chat and who's hanging out with us today. I'm going to hand it over to you, Mac.
Okay, welcome to the Workshop Show. The guy with the earphones and the real mic and the camera up high is my co-host and producer of the show, Daniel Andrew Boyd.
And Mac over here for me is just a lover of stories, and we have come together to create the Workshop Show, along with this whole cast of people who has a range of talents and interests in story.
Yeah, I also I want to make sure we introduce tonight TJ Olatunji, who is our navigator and is going to be both part of the crew and joining in what we're doing, but also at the same time, he keeps an eye on the chat, and he's our link to the outside world here. So, so I want to tell you how this is going to go. Yeah, there you are, TJ. Let me tell you how this is going to go down. Dan is going to pull us together at the beginning here for about a 20-minute stuff to think about when you do storytelling lesson at the top of the show. And then we're going to have the whole crew introduce themselves using just a short prompt. So we're going to do something a little different tonight. Rather than telling two stories and giving people feedback, we're going to actually play some games. And I hope you guys can join in. And part of that game is going to be doing stuff that's going to involve giving each other some kind of comments, suggestions, questions. We call that feedback. And I know there's something we always say about feedback on this show.
Who's going to get the call out?
Yeah, Mac.
Yeah,
I'd like to add, everybody in the audience, don't freak. We're here to critique. It's not about the person, it's about the piece. And if you have some comments, you can share those too. We hope that you also bring some love into this room.
Great, thank you. Thank you. We're all friends here. So the last part of this here is Dan is going to go ahead and jump on this lesson, and then we're going to do our crew intros. Dan, it's back to you.
Yeah. So over the last 30 days, we have been working on this project, and it's called Homework for Life. It was invented by this guy called Mathew, and he has a book on storytelling. He's a big storyteller. Hey, Time Plus Travel. We haven't seen you for a few days. Mathew Dix, he does podcasts and storytelling. He's a big Moth guy. He's got this book, Storyworthy, which is really good. And he pushes out this idea that everybody should be doing this thing called Homework for Life. And so all of us attempted to do this for 30 days. And we're going to talk about what our struggles were, what were some of the good things, what were some of the bad things. And we're going to see if anybody in chat has tried this before or if they'd be up for doing it with us next month. Yeah, these are sort of the things we're working on. So I'm going to start off with my trusty notes and talk about, let me pin myself. Can't do it on the Twitch screen. Here we go. So we're going to talk about Homework for Life, and it's very simple. The way that it works is sometime during the day, but most likely at the end of it, you spend 5 minutes and you write down just a snippet, 1 or 2 sentences of the thing that was the most story-worthy thing of the day. And he talks about how there's all these little things that you can do with it. TJ has already thrown a link to the TED Talk about why he thinks it's great. One of the things that he does, which is a lot of fun, at the end is he sort of gives you this challenge. He's like, I've already explained why 5 minutes a day is nothing, and I've already explained how good this is and how it helps you do all these things, and nobody will do it. And I think we have all had that experience of, we know that there's these little habits that we can do to make us better, and it's tough to do them. It's tough to have a daily habit. So one of the things I want to talk about after this lesson is, what is it about psychology, about the way we order our days, that makes a daily habit a hard thing to do? And I've got some answers for myself. I've got some answers that I think, and we'll see what the chat says. And so to the people in chat, I'm going to say right now, if you have, are there things that you can think of even outside of like homework for life, just writing the most story-worthy moment of your life down every day? Are there some things that you wish you would do every day that are just small things? Hopefully you are all brushing your teeth. So recapped what it is. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so you guys after this can go and watch that YouTube video. And so I'm going to add, and you've got the basic in caps. That's it. There's nothing to it. This is what happened during my day. This is the most interesting thing that happened. So you've got the basic premise of what it is. I'm going to add some things about this that he didn't mention. And they come from, again, my two favorite books and possibly a lecture, but I didn't look up the specific pages. So my favorite books to talk about, one, The Elephant in the Brain, how our sort of memory works and this narrator versus character issue that we have. And then Peak, The Science of Expertise, where it's always talking about very specific ways to go through things. So both these books hit on photographic memory and how memory works at certain junctures. And one of the things about homework for life, taking 5 minutes and writing just 2 sentences, one of the reasons it works and is so effective is that is basically the technique that people who have photographic memories use to build out that photographic memory. So what they have found through studying these people and doing lots of interviews and like following them around, because a lot of them didn't realize they do this. One, they tend to be journalers. And two, there's sort of a neurosis or a neuroticism that they go through their day all the time and they will pick out very specific details. It's self-reinforcing because then it becomes a party trick and they get to do it, and then it becomes this thing. And once it becomes part of their identity, this goes back to the elephant in the brain thing, all of a sudden the narrative around it is, oh, I just have a really good memory. They sort of forget that actually it's because I do this sort of daily meditation on my day all the time. So homework for life is like a mini version of helping you have this sense of photographic memory. And you would think 1 or 2 sentences, it's not going to work. How would I ever remember a story about that? But that part I can say from doing 30 days of this, it does work. And this is why. So our memory, the way we understand it right now, is basically you take little moments and tiny little very specific details, and you will slot those into your long-term memory. And then your short-term and your immediate memory can build that out in imagination. And if you think about this in terms of how our vision works, it's very similar. If you look at studies about vision, people tend to think that they have really wide there's sort of like ultra wide monitor vision that I can see my periphery out to here. But that is not the case. Our vision is pretty myopic. And we know that this happens even more so with people who have sort of myopathy, who have damage. A lot of times they won't know because our imaginations are so good at building out our periphery that it only really comes into play when there's objects that are unexpected that are coming out. Because what happens is you dart from left to right, whether with your eyes or with your head, enough that while you're walking around, you continue to build that periphery with your imagination. You see what's right in front of you because that's the most important thing. Those are the details you're taking in with that vision, and then your imagination builds out the rest. That way you can stay focused and not lose track of where you are. And this is the same thing that's happening with this long-term memory that you're holding back. And holding that. So what you do is you take that and you build it out with your imagination. And this is not to say that homework for life, you are creating fiction stories because you've only written down 1 or 2 sentences. When you're doing this process, you tend to be extremely accurate because life works that way. You do go through the motions in the same way. So most of the time, you're going to be good. I am going to give a funny example of a time that it was not. And one of them is there's a woman who has written a book about she was there and she saw the shooting on the grassy knoll. And you can look at her original interviews and things like that. And she was like, I saw nothing. And every year her memory gets better and better. And she fills in, she's become this like really vivid researcher of the JFK shooting. And so she's now filled in and has this extremely vivid remembrance of everything that was going on. Now, probably most of that is built up because she's read all this stuff and seen these things. And like, if the article I saw was basically they took side-by-side comparisons of like where she was, how she details it in her book versus how she did it before. And they're like, you can see that she details it because now she's seen, the movies about it and things like that. And it's just filtered in. And that's a lot of times how our false memories get built. We put in these details and people will remind us and they're sort of fuzzy. So it is something to think about. But in general, these little tiny details, if we cling to them, we're going to be really good at filling out the rest. We just store 1 or 2 sentences and then you can build it out. Why is it tough? NLSC, or possibly NI, I think it's NLSC 6, has talked about working on German, and that's something that they would spend 5 minutes on. I think that that's a big one for lots of people. I was definitely trying to do Duolingo and various other apps and being like 5 minutes a day on that. That one was harder for me than the storytelling for life. And so I am going to deep-in myself and ask the group about their experience of trying this task. And what did you generally think about it?
I thought that everyday life is not worth writing 2 sentences about sometimes. I
Yeah.
really appreciate my life and I enjoy it, but the uneventfulness of it is like a plane ride with no turbulence. It's exactly what I'm looking for. So my homework for life was not that, you wouldn't want to read it.
uh that's so interesting. Yeah, that was one of the things that I put down in my notes that I thought people would say. I feel like one of my anecdotes is, and I don't remember what the specific thing was, but there are certain people who I was harassing about it more than others. And but one of them was Noah, and I'd give him a call, and and he'd be like, I did nothing, Dan. I was a lazy bump on a log, and I did nothing today, and I'm not going to write down that I was a lazy bump on a log. And I would be like, no, yesterday you told me this story. And I'll tell the one for me, I called him up a week after that experience. And I said, I've done nothing. I'm 3 days behind on this project. I've done nothing. And then he was like, no, dude, you told me that story yesterday, that you're the only one who noticed that girl subtweeted that other girl and nobody got it but you. That's a story. And I was like, oh my goodness, it is. And that is what the practice is about. And that's what's good about it. But it takes time. It's going to take you probably more than 30 days before you get it. Because to get good at something takes this dedicated practice, and you've got to be bad at it before you're good at it. And you've got to kind of take a real stab at doing it as this dedicated thing that you're looking for. And so you could write down 2 sentences every day. I was boring and I did nothing. But part of the process is figuring out how to frame that as a story. And another thing that I was going to put out was, he calls it, building your storytelling lens. And as you go stronger at it, as you grow these skill muscles, you will find you can take these little moments and turn them into more meaningful moments. And having these memories, even if you're not using them for storytelling, having these works as growing that long-term memory ability, but also just like, there are little things that you want to remember that, I wish I could remember this one little thing. This will help in those situations. There were 1 or 2 that I went through with Susan, and I would call her and she'd, give me the nothing happened today. And then I'd say, all right, walk me through it. What's your day? Okay, you were in the car. What did you talk about? Who are you with? And then she would tell me what the conversation was, and we would get something out of that. And it just will take time to find the narrative structure. And it takes practice, and that's why people won't always go through with it. Does anybody else have an anecdote off the top that they could say? Does anybody think that they found a really good story that they would like to build out someday? And it's okay to say no if they didn't.
Well, Dan, I got to admit, I worked on this, but I did it all wrong. I didn't really understand it when I started, and I know that the idea is that we're supposed to be like poets. You walk through life and you see a little flower coming out of the crack in the sidewalk, and bang, it's like, yes, the sidewalk and the flower. And that reminds me of how I changed, when things were really grim. I broke through but I didn't get that at first. Instead, what happened to me is, and I agree with you, Kay, there ain't much going on in this COVID world. But what I did find that my big moments have been listening to other people tell stories, both in this workshop and other places. And every time somebody tells a story, it jogs some memories for me, or something happens here, it jogs some memories for me. And so I mostly wrote down the memories that were jogged, number one. And number two, I'm not worth much at night. So I would like wake up in the morning and it would be like, oh, I remember this girl's name that, gave me this wonderful kiss back when I was 30 years old. Or, I would remember stuff. But anyway, so I think, Kay, I've got the same problem you do in the blandness of life, but I'm going to try that other part to try to notice the small stuff in my tiny little constricted COVID world that maybe could be turned into a story.
Dun dun dun.
Susan has had her hand up here.
Yeah, Susan.
So, yeah, I felt like Kay and Mac, like I just really don't have anything. But now, and of course, I'm ADD, so I lost wherever the thing was that we were supposed to write on. So none of that helped. But after listening to Danny, and it just dawned on me that though I didn't stick it in the right place, I've been corresponding on WhatsApp to people in France and Senegal on just stupid random things of my day. And so I could probably just go look at those days and stick them on the sheet and, get a few stories out of them. And though I think my life is, pretty boring and nothing, but now that Danny's like, do you have any stories? I'm like, well, this weekend I had to go to a 93-year-old lady's house to grab her cat to take it to the vet because the cat was pooping and peeing every place but the litter box. And it was quite a story, just to let you know. And so I guess I do have some. I'm sorry, I have to laugh.
Yeah. So, let me look. And then it looks like TJ. It looks like there's somebody else that maybe we can summarize in a little bit. Yeah, storytelling lens and thinking about that for the deeper for the people who want to work on creating their stories. I do think spending the time and trying to find those were poet moments is worthwhile, and it is something that I have read about in other people's books. The one that comes to mind right now is there's one by Jonathan Franzen, and I think it's How to Be Alone, or Writers Love to Be Alone, something like that. But he wrote a book on writing, and that was a big takeaway for me, is that he liked to be alone, and just he would do these mental exercises all the time of how would I describe it? If I were writing this in a book, how would I describe it? And I didn't realize that was the inner life of a lot of people, that they're building it out in their minds, in their downtime, continuously. And that's what the people with photographic memories are doing. It's this finding the time and the practice. So Mac brought it up where he was like, he noticed I am crap at night. And so he switched up when he was going to do it. When you do the 5 minutes doesn't really matter. I found personally sort of similar. That last night things come on into my brain, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right before I go to bed. And then I'm like, oh, I'm too tired to do anything. So I was similarly, I tended to do them at noon. I could do 2 days. I could do maybe 3. But if I skipped more than that, I couldn't. It took too much work for me to go back. But if I look at my list and I have 6 days and I go into the little things that I wrote, my imagination immediately fills out off of those 2 sentences that I wrote. I can get what was going on, even if I don't have the story structure yet. And I don't think that there is a lot. Some of these I don't know. One of them I wrote down. I wrote deep thoughts about plus A. I have no clue. I have literally no clue why
They were
I
really
thought.
deep, man. They were deep. You can't see them anymore.
That one I thought. Oh, but here's one. December 25th. Not being able to fall asleep, realizing presents are everything to me, was a big deal. And again, back to Mac's thing, a lot of this, what will happen is it'll spark memories from a long time ago for you. Targeted practice, Jonathan Franzen, note on Noah and Susan, and okay, so I'm gonna call people out, and the only TJ, give you a second to unmute yourself, and the question is, what was the hardest part about this? Because yeah.
Okay, so
You're like, Dan
Two
did
things.
not send me enough email reminders.
well, not just that, but I have the same problem that everyone else has, where it's like the monotony of my day so far. There's really nothing interesting that happened or that I think is significant until later on. And hearing people tell a story on their own is kind of what pushes like, oh, well, that moment did happen, and maybe I can express like my thought in that moment, but it's not really anything significant. I'm just at home. But now that we have me off mute, I was responding to Time Traveler Plus, who had an idea. And Time Traveler Plus says he's been using an app called Deleo. She. I'm sorry. Why did I say he? Oh, shit. Why did I do that? Anyway, focus. Deleo, which is a daily tracker. And as I was looking at it, you can actually set reminders to do moods and an actual reminder to have you do it. So I'm sorry, Time Traveler Plus. Yeah, Time Plus Traveler.
You got it.
So anyway, so it's an app I think actually we should all check out. It's pretty good. And that's it.
I'm gonna open up a Word doc, and it's gonna be hairy for a half second, so I can take some notes on Word. Yeah. So I think that is so this is basically everybody's is the monotony made it hard to write it down. This sort of sense of my stuff isn't interesting. So it was easier for me because I'm a narcissist, is basically a little bit of what it comes down to. Everything. I'm the star. I have a story. Maybe that's the one I'll do. I don't know. I have a story where a kid told me that in college. He was like, Dan, it's like every day is a movie and it's all about you. And I was like, yeah. And maybe I've lived the rest of my life like that. So I'm like, yeah, I should write all these plot points down. But if you do it, and think about it in that sense of being a poet, like, how would you do it? how could I just craft the monotony into something interesting that somebody would be interested in? I think that is a valid way to go about this sort of project. I also want to believe that it's not true. I think our days are less monotonous than we think it is, especially when you're just looking for that one story-worthy moment. Because we are these narrative creatures, we narrativize everything in our lives. So I think if we just spent more time and maybe a little bit more of the hand-holding through the process of this, we would get more out of it. I guess I'm up for talking about it more and transitioning. I want everybody to think of this transitioning out of the sense of today's episode is just us bouncing off ideas, and it's like in the sense of workshop, we're workshopping together kind of thing. I don't know what that's. Oh, you brought up Deleo. That's what you're showing us. Is we're going to talk about going forward, what's our next 30-day project? What do we want to work on next? Did we find this valuable enough that we think we should put more effort into it and try it again? Or would it be better to find something else that we're more akin to? And while you guys think about that, and I would like some feedback from everybody in the group, but while you're thinking about that, I'm going to say something that I like about this is from a purely like business standpoint. If we could get buy-in from the community and the people in chat and the people who follow our email list and go to our other shows and stuff like that, I think it could be a very bonding experience where we became accountability buddies and we started working on this. And I think that is how it works for Mathew Dix. It gives him something to say, do this, it'll change your life. And then people do it. They have a good experience. And it also does the thing of being like a little worm that I'm working on his project. It becomes an ad for him. And maybe that didn't work for you guys, but it definitely did for me, where I was like, I got to do Mathew Dix Homework for Life. And so his name was stuck in my head all the time. And so from that perspective, how do we brand it as a Storyluck thing? What's the workshop thing that would be good for people that we're doing every day? And maybe the twist is just that it's this, but we'll help them. Yeah, just jump in. You got to unmute yourself. Yep.
So my thought was, I did have a lot of trouble doing it. But like maybe and I know this would actually probably make it in some ways harder, but like to be even more accountable is like either like once a week or something, you have to actually write the story. Like you can write all these 2 sentences every day, but then you have to look over it and write a story, like to actually make it accountable and feel like, you've accomplished something. That's just my thought.
Well, let's see. I got to get in on this. So I think it's useful. I certainly now have this list of things that my memory got jogged, mostly from other people telling stories, but from other things. So I think it's too early for me anyway to give up on it. I think I would continue anyway. But I think the thing that to remember is we're making this sound like a labor, like, oh, we got to do it.
Yeah, it's homework.
What Mathew Dix says is, hey, like every day is full of possibilities, like this thing that you think is so insignificant, it's sort of full of possibilities, and go with that. Think of it, if I made a story out of this, what would I do? I'll just give you an example. Like, I hadn't really thought about this till we started talking, but Darla and I were at this, we're taking this hike in the desert today. And right at the trailhead, there's these little signs, and they're about the different kinds of plants and the names of them and stuff. And I am terrible at that stuff. I'm dyslexic, and I've always been terrible about memorizing categories or memorizing anything or remember anything. So, but I thought, I'm going to try just two things, and looked at these two things. One was called desert hackberry, and the other one was called, and we go, oh God damn, I don't know if I can remember it. It was called cat's claw acacia. And anyway, has like cat's, like hooky little thorns on it that looks like a cat's claw, right? And so as we went on the walk, I kept stopping and looking at these different plants. Hey, is that it? Maybe that. But actually, now that I think about it, and I wouldn't have written this down, I wouldn't even thought of it until we just were talking about this. That was really pretty cool. I mean, it really changed the way I was walking on this path that I've walked on 3 or 4 times, because I kept stopping to look at it and go like, well, it doesn't have those claws, does it? Well, but this is right, And so, and I thought, well, maybe I'll try one a day. But every time, like, I tried a bird list this summer, and I like had 4 birds on it, like all summer long. One of them was a robin. so anyway, but maybe there's, maybe as I get deeper into this, it'll help me see things that, notice the small stuff is really what he was talking about. And that's what poets do, right? They notice something small, and they sort of bring it into something, massage it, and they do something with it. So anyway, I'd be willing to keep going. I'm going to keep going anyway for a while. But.
I will say, if you do 100 days, he sends you a prize. You got to email him.
Another worksheet. That's the prize. I don't want the prize, Matthew. This is going to be more work.
Time Plus Travel pointed out the Deleo app. There's one that I was looking at called Hit Record, where people just post requests all the time. Write a short story for me about this. Take a picture of this for me. And then some of these have the sense of they're for a bigger thing. Some of them, most of them were, that was it. Somebody would just be like, send me a picture of a landscape. And it would just be 100 people would send them a picture of a landscape. But there was one that I was looking at, and it was, I want to create a fictional mixtape. And he had people submit backgrounds of music that didn't exist. And 25 people wrote short stories about their favorite song, and it was a song that didn't exist. And then his next step is he's making cover art for each of these songs, the 5 that he picked that he liked the best. And then he's going to try to get 5 musical artists to make the songs. And I don't know, that seems like it would be a fun project that maybe we can do in a month or 2 or something like that. And that would be our 30-day thing. And maybe we could just think of something on our own. We wanted to work on some storytelling generation ideas. Does anybody have anything, and say no or nod your heads no if that is the case? Does anybody have anything that they think they can add to this discussion on homework for life? I'm going to... Yeah, thank you. I got 2 nods of no.
I think if I'm going to keep doing it or to be more accurate, start doing it again, I'm going to aim for less. That's kind of what I've decided, just thinking about it and listening to everyone, where I felt like a ton of pressure every day when I was doing it to like come up with something. And I think that it was something that stopped me. Not that I cared that I had a boring life, although it was a little depressing, like having that point hit home every time during COVID.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's COVID's fault. It's not me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think okay, and then I'm going to throw it into the people who are in chat. Are there people in chat who would be up for joining us? If we made a whole new sheet and we just did it semi-publicly where we invited people and we'll send out to our email list and we'll try to get people in on it with us where we're all accountability buddies. Does that interest people in chat? And we'd harass you and be like, what's the best thing that happened today? Moving on to story generation. So what we're going to do. Cool. Thank you. So
We have one individual. She, Time Plus Traveler, would like to join us.
all right. So the next 30 days, I think we'll build that out and we'll start hitting people with the link for it. Boom, boom, boom. And probably I can take a minute and even build up a Google sheet. I'd be up for a 7-day trial. So excellent. I will say from our do the 7-day trial first, but from our 30-day experience, I think it's going to take more than 30 days to get the real value out of it. Okay, so the last time we did a story generation day, we played a game where we started a story and one of us would interrupt as soon as they thought of a story that the first story reminded them of. And then that interruption bounced all around the room. We're going to do it differently this time. I am going to tell a short story. They're going to write down a numbered list of as many stories and story ideas that pop into their heads. And I would like you in chat to do the same thing. And you can write it down on a piece of paper or just throw it into chat as soon as you have an idea of a story. They can whisper emails to TJ if you want to get emailed about the stuff, or hang out with us in the Discord after the show, and then we can talk about how to contact each other. Okay. I am going to. I wanted to do the whatchamacallit story. But now that I'm calling it the whatchamacallit story, I don't know if I have it in my head enough. What story should I tell? I don't know who's in chat. Boom, 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 boom. I'm going to tell the story about the kid who did that thing. So I went to college in this place called Otterbein, and my freshman year I had this kid in the dorm who was pretty ridiculous. And one day we were walking to class and he turns around and he looks at me and he says, you are in a movie. Just look at this. Doesn't it seem like every coming of age movie that a white protagonist is in? Look at the green grass and the sun shining. And I was just like, Jeff, you need to shut up, man. It is too early. We are going to math class. But when I got into math class, I was like, yeah, I am the star. I should make some stuff happen. And I was totally just a ridiculous kid. And I jumped up on my desk and I did a little movie pose, taking over the world of math class today. And then I sat down and I'm starting to think what would happen in the movies. And I'm like, I would flirt with the prettiest girl. And I'm looking around and then I was like, but that's not the right way. I will start talking to her friend and I'll get the inside track. And I start passing notes because I am a child to this girl. And she's passing notes back to me and we're passing notes so much that I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I pull out a notebook and now we're just writing on this notebook. And at the end of it, she says, wait a second. Whoa. Put that pen down. You've got the hots for my friend. And I'm like, yeah. That's what we've been talking about the whole time. And she's like, I thought you were implying that she and I were lesbians, like we were a couple. I thought that's what we were talking about. And I was so embarrassed that I was just like, I'm not feeling well today. And I walked out of class. I left my book back there. I just left. And all my buddies thought it was the funniest thing that they had ever seen in the entire world. And they were like, it was just like a movie. You did it. You're the movie star. And they're congratulating me. And I was like, no, it was the worst. It was not a movie. It was the most embarrassing thing. And then the one kid said, Dan, you've got to do it tomorrow. But you should just fake a seizure and make it really big and ridiculous. And I was like, that's the opposite of what I should do. And he's like, you should do it with Alka-Seltzer because then your mouth will foam up and it'll be funnier. And I was like, no, again, opposite of what I should do. And then he goes, but I know your weakness, Dan. I bet you $1. And that is my weakness, that I'll do basically anything for $1 bet. And so I'm freaking out. And then another kid goes, I'll give you $5. And then I was like, you're not even in the class. And he's like, I will show up and give you $5 if you fake a seizure in math class. And so I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And then we're talking about the logistics of it. And then I'm like, but the girl will never date me if I fake a seizure in class. That's out the window. And then my friends were like, okay. We can solve this problem. And the way we're going to solve this problem is you will ask her out first. And then if she says yes, clearly you do not fake a seizure. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But then I get the Alka-Seltzer and the water and we're all walking to class, including 3 people who were not in that class. And I'm like, wait a second. When she says no, she's going to think I faked the seizure because she said no, but that's not the case. And they're like, oh, we'll explain it to her. It's definitely not the case. You're not freaking out because she said no. And I was like, okay. So I get down there and I sit down and I have the Alka-Seltzer and these 3 kids have come in and they've explained to the teacher that they need to record the class and they're auditing it for a day for another thing that they're in, which is total bullshit. And I'm very nervous. And I open up the Alka-Seltzer packet and I open up the water bottle. And Jeff, the original mastermind of this whole thing, slips me a note. And it says, Dan, don't do it. And I flip the note over and I write, fuck you. You are not my friend. And I pass it back to him and I throw the Alka-Seltzer into my mouth and I take a huge swig. and my mouth does not foam. The Alka-Seltzer breaks apart and it starts going and just like shooting all over inside my mouth. One goes down my throat and I kick all of the books off the table and I go and I blow all this water into the back of the thing and I jump up and I fall down and I jump up and I fall down and then I climb back up and I climb into Jeff's face and I blow as much water as I can all over him and then I run for the door. And as I'm going for it to open it up, my hand is just slobbering wet, so it slips and I slam my head into the door and then I run away. And on the recorded tape, the professor has a pregnant pause of about 3 seconds before he says, "As I was saying, to find the hypotenuse of a circle, you take..." Thank you very much. All right, so everyone unmute themselves and just give the number right away of how many stories came up for you during the story that you remembered.
Maybe 2.
And is Noah at 0?
I had 3, but one was about a meme about passing notes I saw. That I disagreed with. I disagreed with that that meme.
That sounds like a quick one. Tell us.
The meme was just like the moment I realized I was old was when my students didn't understand what passing notes was. But it's bullshit because I'm a teacher and kids pass notes all the time, and also they watch movies that are older than 10 years, so everyone knows what passing it. It was a lie. It was a lie, that meme. That never happened.
Right. That's great. Kids don't know what passing notes means. Yeah, that's funny. Maybe someday. Yeah. Does anybody have one that they think does anybody how many you had? One, Susan?
Yeah, so
what is your one?
So my one is, and I don't know what got into my head in college, but there was a bike rider who was winning races and kind of was a little famous at Michigan State University. And I spotted him in this huge cafeteria that we had where we had to do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so I went up and asked him for his autograph. And that's like as close as I got to doing a Danny story.
Would other people just go through your titles?
You mean titles of what we wrote?
Yeah.
Chuck Palmer at Scheimer, being the star of a movie once, never came out. The desk in junior high where I did my report on Kon-Tiki. The guy with the huge nose in junior high school. Fonda Peters, who we used to. That was one of those jokes in junior high where you. Yeah. Okay. Fonda Peters. Mr. V, the car explosion. The Dare. I took off my clothes. Johnny, the dog sled. There's something about Oberlin sharing something. I can't read my writing, but anyway, I had 9 of them. Yeah.
Kay, do you want to go through your?
I could go through the list, but honestly, the one story is the best story, which is the day I made friends with my math class bully.
Okay. Do you want to tell that story?
Sure. So this was probably the 10th grade, high school. I just got to my new school from a private school, and for me, I thought that I was going to be more worried about fitting in because I came from like this all girls, day and boarding private school, and I went to a public magnet school. So I'm like, okay, hopefully there's some academic rigor, but honestly, I think it's going to be totally day and night. I don't know what I'm going to do in this place. But I fit in really well there, like instantly. I didn't really worry about anything. The classes were too easy. So I would sit in the back of the class and I would often like do all my work, like the homework, the work for the next couple days, and go to sleep, literally put my head down and go to sleep on the desk. And then I started to realize, like, at the same time of day, there was a boy sitting next to me who would do the same thing. He would seem to just finish everything really early, and then he would put his head down and go to sleep. And then we started to become friends just because we were sitting next to each other. And it's like, all right, yeah, we're like 30 minutes into this class. I guess we're done. Um, so me and Nick were just like homies. We would just hang after that. We would always just shadow each other. I changed my name to Nick. My name starts with a K. I started spelling my name Knick because that was my homie. We're best friends. I'm Nick and he's Nick now. And people actually went along with this. They would call me Nick because I told them to. But one day, leaving math class, this girl, I'm going to call her Kareen, not her real name. Kareen blocks my exit to the door and she's like, "You really are into Nick, aren't you? Like, you really like him." And I was like, "No, like, not really. I mean, he's cool people. He's cool. Like, that's my homie." But apparently, she had had a crush on him for a long time. So, again, this is 10th grade. For me, I'm 5'4" now. So I was no taller than 5'4" then. She's like maybe 5'8" or 5'9", which is a giant to me. Tall girl, and she's got the like Helga unibrow from Hey Arnold, the cartoon. If you've ever seen that, the unibrow character, she looks just like this character to me. Um, and and I'm like, okay, Kareen, like, I really got to get to the next class. So can we talk about this later? She took me at my word, and we talked about it like for the next several days. Every day she had an issue with me, presumably, because of Nick. And then one day I just hung back in class because I knew she was going to hang back to block my exit as usual. And I was just like, can we talk? Can we sort this out? And she hadn't said it before, but she had a crush on Nick. And she was just concerned that like she'd like this guy. They'd gone to different schools together. She'd grown up with him and she'd never said anything to him about it. Um, and she's like, "Oh, I just felt like you're in my territory. You're in my space." And I'm like, "Nah, bro. We just take naps. It's okay." And from that day on, Kareen and I were good to go. She'd actually take up for me if anybody else was thinking of being, my new bully. So, you know, do your math and take your naps.
That's great.
I
Yeah.
thought of one. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just have a couple.
Okay.
5.
Okay. Hit us with the
Did
titles.
you want me to go through the list or not?
Yeah, go through the list.
Okay. So one is called Sonic Coin Flop. When I fail, jumping on someone's back. Prof hates my laugh. Hair being pulled. Girls run the playground. And where's her teeth? Yeah.
I want to make sure that I got that right. Is it Cop Hates My Laugh? COP?
Professor. I'm sorry.
Professor.
Yeah, professor.
Does anybody have titles that they haven't given yet?
Loco.
Okay.
Mine is the best name I could come up with is Friend Like Me, because I was listening to your story, Dan, and I know I kind of came at the end of it, but it kind of sounded like it was, testing a friendship between you and another person. And so it reminded me of a story that I had that really showed, the people that I was friends with, like who I was, and it was pretty fun. So that's the one that I remember.
I'm gonna now just say that off of these, there are just the titles have triggered some ideas for me. I couldn't encapsulate it now, but I also have a movie story of a movie that didn't come out. Was not the star. Huge nose. I think I have an essay that I can write about that. Because I listened to a talk by Steve Martin, who did that retelling of, I'm gonna get the name wrong, Sergio de Bergerac. Somebody's
Cyrano.
Cyrano. There we
Roxanne.
go. Yeah.
Sergio is his brother.
Right, Cyrano de Bergerac. So I think I've got an essay in me somewhere. There's got to be something on Inside Jokes if I took more time. There's a kid who head on desk story. Who said that one? Because Kamaria also had a head on desk, but I have it written down like somebody else said it. Head on desk. Anyway, there was a kid with a record of how many classes he could sleep through, and every year he would be like, I've done it, Dan. I've beaten my old record. I slept through more classes this year. And he figured out which teachers got the least upset and tried to like get them. I think that I have an essay about girls as bullies and the difference between girls as bullies and boys as bullies in me. I feel like I have some thoughts that are probably not like PC, because they can't be, right? If I'm trying to say there's a difference. But I think that there's something fun in there. Professor hates my laugh. My laugh is distinctive. I've got some stories about that. And because I thought it was Cop Hates My Laugh, I have a cop story. Dun dun dun. Did any of these titles register for anybody else where they were like, oh, just the title was enough? I've sparked something. And you can just unmute and come at me as fast as possible.
So just listening to you and everybody, I got a couple. So, kids not writing in cursive. My almost being in the movie with Robert Downey Jr. Seeing Morgan Freeman in Puerto Rico. I slept through an accounting class, and I didn't know that I was sleeping through it. The other students had to tell me. Not getting detention at EP Clark Elementary School and not going to the detention, skipping it, and teaching my brother that's right below me how to do sunsets my way, and finding out that the teacher hated them and reaming my brother out for doing sunsets, drawing sunsets like his sister. Those are mine.
Yeah, I remember the sunset story. That's funny. Loco, you're next.
The laugh kind of reminded me. I've recently been informed by my wife that I have a certain kind of laugh that she's not really comfortable with. So like, it's PC. Don't worry. It's nothing bad. But yeah, it's a short one.
Real quick, anybody else jump off of mute?
Well, I had forgotten about this, but I had a head on putting my head down on my desk and getting this whack on my head. And the teacher had thrown a piece of chalk at me and never expected to hit me, but hit me right in the middle of my head and woke me right up. So it brought back a lot of memories of that class and what that was like.
Does anybody have one from this list that they would like to build out? And I'm gonna, give you a minute to think about it. Try to do like a 3-minute story off of something that you have written down there.
I could do the E.P. Clark story.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm in, I believe it was 2nd grade. So I had an awesome 2nd grade teacher, and her name was actually Mrs. Blueberry. She was wonderful. Nikki and I were best friends. But this elementary school, which I didn't know because it was the only one I'd ever gone to, was a little strict for a public school. The principal didn't actually talk to students. He would only go over the intercom system that went all through the school and just basically give us the strict rules every day. And we had the Pledge of Allegiance over the intercom. So we had a lot of things like just bombarded onto us. And we all ate in this huge cafeteria all at the same time. Every elementary student was shuffled into this cafeteria with the tables that, fell out from the wall and, also served as the gym kind of thing. And that's where we all ate. So you can imagine that the whole students, kindergarten through 6th grade in one big room, was just, a noise-filled room of kids and food. And I didn't think much about it because that's, what we had. But if the principal came over the intercom, which he liked to do a lot, everybody had to be quiet. And nobody was allowed to say anything. So we're at lunch, and I'm with Nikki, and we're sitting there at this long table, and he's coming over the intercom, saying whatever he's saying, and Nikki was talking to somebody. And Nikki's my best friend, so I can't talk because he's on the intercom, but I can't not look and see what she's talking about. That would be ridiculous. So I turned to see what Nikki was talking about. Now I'm in 2nd grade and I'm like trying to be as good as gold always. That's just like was my thing. So I never thought I'd be in trouble because I wasn't talking. But lo and behold, because Nikki was talking and I turned, I got swept up with her and told we can't finish our lunch. We had to go up, throw it out, and go to detention. Granted, we're in 2nd grade, okay? Detention is not just a normal detention where you go to a room, sit at a desk, and be quiet. No, detention meant, which is why you had to throw out your food and get out of there fast, that you had to stand with your legs slightly apart, your hands behind your back, in the hallway, so every kid could walk past you and know that you were in detention. We're in 2nd grade. Like now I'm just like, this is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. Well, because they did it quite late to the whole process of catching Nikki and throwing me under it, it was just about the same time that also you could kind of fly through with the kids that were going outside for recess. So Nikki, obviously being a better girl than I was, went to detention to go stand and have everybody file by. And I was like, hell no. Like, you're not embarrassing me like this. And so I flew out to recess with all the other kids and I played at recess. And I'm just like, yep. So as I come back in, I can see the lunchroom ladies whispering into my teacher's ear as I'm filing back in to go to my classroom about what an awful child I am. And I could just see, because like I said, I had one of the best teachers in the school, luckily. Her just like going like, this is just nonsense. She's like one of the best little kids in the world, and let me go. So poor Nikki got in trouble. She was talking though. And
Oh,
and that's my EP cut story.
can I? How hard is this? That's great.
And I could just see, because like I said, I had one of the best teachers in the school, luckily. Her just like going like, this is just nonsense. She's like one of
I'm
the
just going to
best
throw this
little kids
in there,
the world,
Susan. I love
and
that
let me go.
story. And good for you. I don't know, maybe the little you realized that this is ridiculous. And so you saved yourself. But
Yeah, I think it was more like, hell no, you're not embarrassing me. She's like, mm-mm.
I have a friend, Nadia, who has a story that's a little bit similar, and she was in Romania, and it was 4th grade, and I'm going to try to cut it quick, but in 4th grade, she went into the bathroom, and there was a boy in the girls' bathroom, and he was killing a rabbit. And she punched him, and she hit him so hard that he went unconscious, and they had to and she burst his appendix. And so they just barely saved his life. And so even though, and he had been caught killing cats in the bathroom prior to this. And so even though this kid was like pretty crazy, what they did for they had a weekend of shame. And so on Friday, they had her stand in a circle, and all the 4th and 5th graders would, the entire recess, stand around her in a circle and hurl insults and laugh at her. And they told her to stand there, and she said, she looked at the teacher and she was like, no, this is dumb. And she just left. And I was like, you saved yourself some trauma.
there's a lot to unpack in that story. I'm glad she didn't stay there, though.
Yeah. School different in different places.
Not quite that different.
Yeah.
And how did the rabbit do?
He killed it.
Oh,
I don't remember specifically. It might not have been a rabbit, but it was some small animal, and it might have been 2 cats that he did in there. But yeah, he was hiding cats in the girls' bathroom and then killing them, or rabbits, one of the 2. Yeah, terrifying.
I'm just saying, I think we should have early interventions for all of us. We're all on a spectrum of mental health. Nobody's exactly where we want to be, but the killing of the animals, that's very specific. We need some intervention here.
Yeah.
See, I missed my evaluation, but thankfully I have Dungeons and Dragons to keep me busy. So I have a story if I could share.
Yeah, hit us.
Quick one. It was the laugh one. Is that okay?
Yep.
So it has recently come to my attention, and maybe this is just because of COVID, but my wife has alerted me to the fact that apparently when I'm not aware of how I'm laughing, it sounds like a hyena, like an evil maniacal hyena. And I told her, no, that's ridiculous. I've always laughed like this. It's perfectly fine. Well, about 2 months ago, if memory serves correct. We had a friend sleep over, and she was safe and all that kind of stuff. We were careful and everything, but like she just needed to get out, and um, we kept our distance. But she said she kept hearing like eerie sounds coming from our bedroom, and my wife is like, no, I don't. What do you mean eerie? And so she repeated it, and she said, oh, yeah, that's him. And so then I was confronted by both of them, and they said, look, this is what you sound like. I'm telling you. And they looked up YouTube videos. They pulled up The Lion King. They pulled up National Geographic. And I said, no, that's not it. About 3 weeks ago, my wife and I were out, one night in the living room, and we were watching TV and everything, and I was still working on my drawings, and I decided to pull an all-nighter, and so we have a lounge, and I ended up falling asleep on it. Well, the next morning, my wife and my daughter came out to the living room, and we're watching TV, and they're letting me sleep on the lounge next to the sofa. And apparently, what my daughter describes happened to me was I was chasing something that was very small, and I almost had it because I kept biting the pillow and making laughing noises. So now every time I laugh, I keep being aware, so I'll go, ha ha, my wife doesn't know what's going on with me. I'm like trying to catch myself doing it, but yeah, it apparently freaked her out. So I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, that's great.
So I've changed my laugh since we're doing laughing stories.
Yeah.
So I used to have this laugh where you thought like I was like gasping. I'd be like like that. And I got so many comments about it that I did actually change my laugh, and I don't do that anymore. So you can change it.
Yeah. Eddie Murphy has that story. In the early movies, he had a very different laugh, and he got so many comments about it that he got a coach to change his laugh.
I didn't need a coach.
See, she's the real OG. I didn't need a coach. I did it myself.
I did it myself.
It's like a badge of honor in my family. If you can get the women on our side of the family to laugh till we cry, because my aunt does the gasping laugh too, but then it'll just become silent tears. You'll just see us, you know. It's like, it's really got to be funny. Then it's a wrap.
I was at a show one time, and a woman turned around and she said, "Are you part of the production? What are you doing?" And I was like, what? I don't, that laugh. And then I was like, no, that's just my laugh. And she's like, well, stop.
I'm thinking about times, a special time, when you're not supposed to laugh.
Oh, yeah.
And you've really got to stuff it. I was like in graduate school. I was like in my 30s. And we had this statistics teacher, social work school, right? We had the statistics teacher who was kind of fairly well dressed. He would take his, suit jacket off. He had a white shirt on, and he had these dark pants. And he was the kind of guy who just sort of strutted around the room. And if he was talking to one of the women in the class, he'd put his foot up on a chair and bend in and talk to her. I mean, it was really inappropriate. And we were social workers, statistics. And so he would also lean up against the chalkboard, the chalkboard tray, and talk. And, he did this whole thing. And so I got into class early one day, and I chalked up the chalkboard edge, and so he leaned back on the chalkboard edge, and then he was strutting around. He had this white stripe across his ass, and I mean, I was sitting there. It was just so hard not to just lose it. And other people started to get that point. And some of the women in the class were like looking at me and saying, Mac, you should not have done that. Like, I was like being like a 12-year-old, But it's those times when it's really the worst, when you're really gonna lose it, but you got to hold it in. It's sort of like having to go to the bathroom or something, and having to take a pee, and you just gotta hold it in. So that's what it brought back for me, those times. Oh God.
Thank you so much. I think that we've done a good job of having a quick back and forth episode of generating stories. Stories beget stories. Conversations with people beget stories. We will be working on Homework for Life. Thank you to everyone who came to the show today. And does anybody have last words that they want to say, or any last? No. Okay. So I am going to say goodbye. Everybody unmute themselves so they can say goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
We will see you next week, February 8th, I think is the Monday. And if you want, we are going to sit and hang out in Discord for a little bit. And if you will, TJ, throw in the Homework for Life TED Talk. And yeah, we'll be in Discord shortly. Thank you everyone for showing up, and it was a wonderful show. Thank you everybody in chat. Thank you, Mac. Thank you, Kamara, and Loco, and everybody else. Noah, TJ, and Susan. Okay.
Good night. Good night.